Yeah, we are on air.
We are on air.
So, hello.
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 So, welcome to the webinar of the World Refugee Day 2017. My name is Jose, and I'm the SCORP General Assistant for this term. And we are here for the webinar, which is part of the IFMSA International campaign. And we are going to start this webinar with a round of introductions. So, Jessica.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica. For the ones of you who don't know me, I am the current SCORP director for IFMSA. And obviously, the topic of refugees is very important for SCORP, so I'm working with this a lot within IFMSA, but it's also the topic that made me start working with civil society actually long before I even knew what IFMSA was. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy that you are here with us so that we can continue discussing this very important topic.
So hey all, my name is Michael. I'm liaison officer for human rights and peace issues. I come from Slovakia. I'm a second medical student. And well, when it comes to refugees, we also do a lot in the IFMSA in an external field and in collaboration with other partners and in policy work. So I'm really looking forward to tell you more about our activities and to maybe also inspire you to connect to the IFMSA and start to work in this field as well.
So, hello, my name is Yahya Al-Kadri. I was born in Damascus, Syria, 1996. I studied medicine at the Faculty of Medicine in Damascus for 2 years. But unfortunately, I had to leave my country 2 years ago. And I'm here to share my experience as a refugee with you. And it's a pleasure to meet you all.
All right. And we will also have hopefully another speaker with us from MSF, Doctors Without Borders. And she is not here right now due to technical issues, but we are hoping that she will be with us soon. So as for the webinar, which we expect to last between 1 and 1.5 hours, I will start by giving you a general introduction to the topic. And then if Julia is here from MSF, she will talk a bit about the work of MSF and what they experience on the ground. Then we will come back to me and I will talk a bit about the work of SCORP and our stance on this topic. And Michael will, as mentioned previously, talk a bit about our external work, and Yahya will share his experiences. And in the end, we will also be able to answer any questions that you might have. As you might see, there is this, if you're watching live, there is this comments field to the right of the video, and you can use this area freely to write whatever you want to write. If you have any comments, if you have any questions for any of us, if you want to discuss with each other, if you want to introduce yourself, etc. You can ask questions at any time, and we will try to answer them as soon as we can, and if not, we will answer them at the end of the webinar. And I think that's all. So I'm going to start. First things first, who is a refugee? And I'm sure that many of you already know this. So if any of you here who is here knows this, you can write in the comment section your thoughts on who a refugee is. And we will come back to this in a while. In the meantime, we can have a look at some numbers. So the number of forcibly displaced people today is around 66 millions, and this is the highest number since World War II. And I think you can see my screen right now. I'm not the most technical person in the world. As you can see, the number has been steadily increasing over the past couple of years. In 2014, it was 59.5, and in the middle of 2016, it was 65.6. And most of these displaced persons stay within their own country of origin as internally displaced persons. And among the people who do cross an international border, they mostly stay in neighboring countries. And these are then the people who are refugees. Sorry. Oops, that was not the right slide. and this is around 16 million people today. Can you see the, yeah, all right. And now if we go back to the definition, as I said previously, it's someone who has crossed an international border, and it is due to a well-grounded fear for persecution. And most famously, the reason for the persecution is due to their race, their nationality, their religious affiliation or political opinion, or a belonging to a specific social group. So this could be, for example, LGBT communities and so on. This is the most widely used definition, and it was set by the United Nations. It's in the Refugee Convention. However, according to this definition, as you might have figured out, war or generalized violence is not a ground for being a refugee. Nevertheless, many countries in the world today recognize war as a reason for why people flee, and people who flee from war are still, in their opinion, refugees, but this doesn't go for all the countries. In some countries, they are instead given something called subsidiary protection, which means that, okay, you're applying for asylum, you're not a refugee according to our definition of refugees. Nevertheless, you should stay here because things will go really, really badly if you go back. I think Julia is with us now as well. Is that correct? Julia, can you hear me and can you speak?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, great to have you here. Would you like to just briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Julia Garcia. I'm a Spanish doctor of health. I have been working for MSF since 2012, more or less kind of 8 missions, and I have been working in migrant context, refugee context, in 2014 in Greece in detention centers, and later on in Lesbos in 2015.
We're very happy to have you here now with us. So we just briefly introduced ourselves before and started to talk about the kind of basic facts relating to refugees. And when I'm done with this part, it will be your turn to talk. So I'm going to continue. So yeah, I was just saying that some countries recognize people fleeing from war as refugees, some others don't. But I don't think we should go deeper into this because that would be a discussion that would last for several hours or even days. And for our purposes here today, I think it would be fine to say that everyone who has fled their country because they are afraid that they cannot live there anymore, like they fear for their lives, and they go to another country not because they want to go there, but because they cannot stay. I think we can regard them as refugees in what we talk about. And as mentioned, then refugees often face a lot of different challenges, both before they are displaced, because that's kind of why they flee, right? There can be violence and persecution. Some of them might come from backgrounds where the health system isn't functioning very well, and that can also have its consequences, but this is very different from one country to another. And then obviously the process of displacement can have its implications on health, both like psychologically to be uprooted from everything that you know, maybe even leave your family, and also like the dangerous routes or like the lack of safe routes. And I'm sure you can figure out yourself what consequences it might have to cross, for example, the Mediterranean Sea in a small inflatable boat. And but then also after arriving to a safe country, there can be a lot of challenges. For example, you might not get residency permit, so there's this uncertainty about the future. What will happen? Will you be deported? Will you be able to stay? You might face discrimination, and you might not be able to access education or work or health systems, or people might treat you differently, and so on. And so I think I'm going to stop here because I know that Julia is in a rush also afterwards. So I'm leaving the floor to you now.
Okay, thank you so much. And yes, sorry, but today I have to take some planes, so it's quite rush time for me. Sorry so much for this. So I'm absolutely agree with the point that you said. Just to take in consideration that at this moment there is more than 65 millions. Indeed, last month came out the new number of 66 million of people flying from their places. We have to kind of, we are not going to go for the legal issue for sure, but we have, in terms of the people who are just flying their country and the people who had to cross their country. For health is quite important, because can you imagine, for example, when one person from Syria 4 years ago, where the health system were more or less good, the people who were flying inside the country, the health was protected because the government were recognizing their rights. But once that they fly from their countries, the new country, the host country, let's say, they don't recognize the right anymore in the most of the times. So, and in Europe, it's quite different, the situation according of the country. For example, in Greece, in Greece in 2015, there was the law that there was only free care, access to care for emergency for children under 12. However, this law changed in April 2015, and nowadays it's free for everyone and also for chronic conditions. What happens? That is the law, that is the theory, and after, what happens if you only speak Farsi and you have to go to the doctor? Accessibility or accessible, sorry, or not. So that is one of the points that we have also to consider when we are talking about health and health accessibility, that they are related but they are not the same. Sorry, because that is the first time that I'm using this platform. How could I put one PowerPoint and
You can
it
see
would
to
be,
the left-hand side of the screen. There is a
yes,
green button which says screen share. So you can just press this one.
a screen. Yes, sorry, give me 1 second. Uh,
It's in the left upper corner, some like small green arrow, green.
yeah, and I'm here and I'm comparting my presentation. Can you see now?
Yes,
Yes,
we can.
perfect.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know if all of you know about MSF. Just tell me yes, no, and I will not speak so much about it. Yes, hello?
I think you can just briefly, with few sentences, describe for our viewers.
Okay, sure. So then I will do that. Just two very important things that we did is that we were founded not only by doctors, as you can think when we talk about Doctor Without Borders, but also by nurses and also by journalists, because we wanted to speak out about the Biafran War in Nigeria. It was a kind of really disaster, and the organization were there. They wanted neutrality, and there was a group of people who said, we don't want to confuse neutrality with silence. So it's for that that Médecins Sans Frontières was created. In this sense, you can imagine that one of our mission is not only to take care with dignity to the people who has more vulnerability, but also to speak out about the situation that we think that they are not fair. In the sense of we don't know if wars can cure, but we know surely that silence kills. So in this sense, one of our strongest point is that we are all around the world. We are now in 80 countries, more than 80 countries indeed, and in this sense, we know quite well. We have a quite broad vision about what is happening in the world and in the migration, because we are in the origin countries of origins and also in the reception countries. Let's say we are in Pakistan, we are in Syria, we are in, now we are going to come again to go again to Somalia, South Sudan, etc., etc. So With this small brief about MSF, one important thing is that the migration is not going to go away. That was this article in Lancet, was an editorial in 2 years ago, and now the things, as we can see, didn't change. It's going more and more, and we know that it's going to be one of the major forces shaping the 21st century, and it's yeah, and it's a thing that we can close eyes, but that doesn't mean that it's going to go away. And health, it's one topic that has been largely ignored. And now, since 5 years, we are having more and more article papers taking this one in consideration. So first topic, we have to remove from our mind the top 10 refugee host countries. None of them, they are in Europe. Not of them. The country which is taking the most of the refugees is Turkey, with 2.5 millions, and Lebanon, a small country, 4 millions inhabitants. They have taken almost the same that all Europe together, and you can see and compare sides. So it's quite different, and that is one of the, because when you see European crisis, it's not an European crisis, it's a worldwide crisis. And that you are a medical student, definition of health, that's for sure, you know, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease of infirmity. What does it mean? Does it mean that when we are talking about health, we cannot talk only about a flu or a chronic disease, but also about mental, and you are going to see how this change and really go much worse during the last 2 years, and also the social well-being, this feel of the refugee to feel himself acceptance in the community, and that is quite important, and at the moment we are not going so well in this. So MSF is, we are in Europe, just focusing in Europe. We are in quite a lot of places. We are in all the route, and we are also in, we have 2 big boats in the route from Libya to Sicily. Just, you know, also what we are doing, and you have also this, this vision. So, when we speak out, Médecins Sans Frontières, I'm going to talk since now about MSF. We always speak out about the things that we have seen. We never talk about things that we have listened, or there are rumors or whatever. Always the things that we have seen. And the things that we have seen, it's poor reception conditions. You are going to see later some pictures. Sometimes we really think that is a deterrence way for refugees. We have seen, for example, in Serbia, policemen just removing blankets and shoes to the refugees when it was minus 10 degrees. The detention has been used also as a deterrence. The externalization of borders. All of you know the agreement, the Turkish deal. For us, the shame agreement, and that was in 2016. But however, now there is an agreement with Libyan government. You know, Libya, it's a failed country nowadays after the war. It's a kind of, it's more or less like Syria. There is a zone that is controlled by the old government, and all the rest, there are a lot of small groups fighting one against others. Libya, the government didn't sign the Geneva Convention, so you can imagine how safe it is for refugees or for any person. We are facing closure of borders, and we are going to see how this affects to health. active force on voluntary return policy, Amnesty International, Gold Human Rights. All of us, we have denounced about all this pushback against law, against international law. Greece, Serbia, Macedonia, Italy, Libya, Turkey, Morocco, Algeria, Senegal. We are talking about, we are not, we are against the law. And what are the consequences of that? There is a lack in access to health, a discrimination, there are violence, violation of human rights, interruption of chronic treatment. Syria, it used to be a very, very good health system. And I have seen patients with heart bypass or with chronic renal diseases and a need of hemodialysis. And they had to fly, and they have to fly 10 days, 15 days without hemodialysis. You can imagine. Mental health disorders. Please, one thing that is very, very, very important for you as a doctor, know everyone who has been under a traumatic event is going to be traumatized. That is very, very important, because sometimes TV or other media, even also serious newspapers or serious scientific newspaper, are going to victimize a bit, to give a sense of superiority. Oh, poor refugees. No, the most of them, the sense of resilience is so big that the most of them are not going to have a mental health problem. However, there are people who will need some treatment, that for sure. I continue correlation between substandard living condition and diseases. You're going to see how important is that for health. Torture and ill treatment. The 50% of people who are coming from Libya, we noticed sign of torture and abuse. It's terrible, the situation there. Labor exploitation and human trafficking also overall in the people who, after the closure of Turkish border, they are coming around Libya, and this the situation is really terrible. So what we are doing, just to understand also since which point of view I can speak, it's we are giving this cultural mediator. I mean, it's very important, because it's not only the language, but also the sense of how to say things. You are in international association, you know that sometimes things that Spanish can think that is normal is not for a German, and so you can imagine also in a crisis moment when all these small details, they are quite important. We are doing also medical screening at arrival, just because after the trip, the health has been deteriorated. Primary health care and health promotion, chronic medical conditions and continuity of care, mental health and psychological support activities, coverage of vital and emergency needs, addressing infectious diseases with epidemiological potential, and referral and with company to secondary health facilities. As I told you before, they can go to the hospitals, and at this moment, it's absolutely right that they are going there. But the most of the time, the doctor cannot speak English or cannot speak for sure Arabic. So that is a very important and a very gap that we are covering partially and not in all Greece. So continuing a bit, sexual gender-based violence, when people are having stress and they are feeling in deterrence, let's say, all the bad potential, I don't know how to say, but I mean, when one human is suffering and is suffering pressure, all these kind of behaviors are going to go out. So at this moment, we are having this kind of problem, that we are having more and more tension and some sexual gender-based violence, and that is an issue that we, and when I say we, is all the society in Greece, in Serbia, etc. We have to take away. That is happening in camps, in places where they are detained. We are visiting also in all detention and reception centers. If we want to, in order to speak out about conditions, we are trying to do the screening of vulnerable groups, no food item distribution. That means for all humanitarian people, blankets, water, clothes, etc., and wash activities. We have also specialists in wash. What is when we are working in a camp, if there is not enough toilets, we are going to build. If there is not enough latrines, we are going to build, because if there is not enough, we are going to have more diseases, more contagious diseases. So we really need that one to improve the health of the population. And for sure, as I told you, we are going to do advocacy. All these things we have recopilated in 5 reports since 2006. The first one is done in Greek. I could not read neither. All the rest, they are in English. I have to say I participated in the second one and a bit also in the third one. And it's I think that if you have time and if you are interested on that, it's quite interesting that if you can read. That is some picture of situations all around. That is the 3 boats that we had last year. Now we are going to have 2, but bigger. That is one of the rescue operation in Lesbos. And very quickly also, so the situation is that in 2014 we have the detention center. In 2015 we have people on the move that they didn't want not to stop. I have seen, for example, 2 women with misabortion in the first trimester of the pregnancy, and they didn't want to stop for the legrade because they were very afraid that the border was going to close, and then they were going to stay behind the groups. So you can imagine the fear of closing borders, and is that how all this political situation was influencing so much to the health of the refugees. Let's say people on the move. Like that, we are not going to enter in this polemic of refugees, not refugees, even if we know that 80% is coming from countries where has been a conflict. And in 2016, the situation changed. And when I say situation changed, that means that people are detained in some place, and not always they are not always able to move around. So you can imagine that these 3 situations are quite different, and they are going to affect quite different to the health of the population. And as I want to give you time to have to ask all the questions you want, I'm just want to go for sorry. I'm just going to go for the percentage of diseases. As you can see, is the same as in one primary health center in another place. You have upper respiratory tract infection, muscular conditions. That was in a detention center, but you're going to see that the diseases are more or less the same. The only thing is the proportion of the diseases. And the 63% is linked to the substandard detention conditions. I mean, I have seen people who were not able to move at all because there was not a space in the cell for 22 hours a day. So can you imagine if you have to sit all the time sitting on your bed, how that is going to affect your health? That is the impact on psychological health. That is quite there is a big bias in the sense that these people are the people who went to the mental health consultation. So all of them, they are going to have a mental health problem, but only the 30% went to mental health consultation, and that is the kind of conditions that they were having. That is one of the best rooms that I have seen. And yes, I know that one of the rumors is that they are going to take some illnesses, they are going to transmit, they are going to, yeah, they are going to bring Ebola, whatever. No, that is not truth, and we can discuss that one a bit later if you want. But it's not only us, MSF as humanitarian organizations. There are all organizations, WHO, the CDC, European CDC, that we are saying the same. I mean, there is, yes, there are hepatitis B and there are tuberculosis, but that one, they are also in our community. So, and we have to take the same measures that we are taking here. One of the things that I saw, for example, was the policemen were so afraid to give razors for everyone that they gave razors, 5 razors for 70 men, and they were sharing razors. So can you imagine the epidemic that the political will was doing inside the cell? When the people were moving, we had also the same fear. Let's say, will they take some illnesses? That was also the time of Ebola. They will take us Ebola. No, one person, the person who are doing the trip, they are healthy. If not, they cannot do. And anyway, as the situation I told you, I will go for that. We did quite a lot of consultations, and the diseases were exactly the same. And we can see also just briefly how the respiratory tract infection, the percentage is going to increase in Serbia, sorry, in Serbia is the red one. So that means that the cold of the trip was increasing all these respiratory tract infections. In any case, 93% of symptoms onset during the migration and not before. Chronic disease, a big problem overall in Syria, where there was this great health system. Many people could not take the hypertension pill anymore, and they were having a lot of complications. And at the same, I saw one grandmother, 22 over 110, and she didn't want to stay. She didn't want to stay because she didn't want to stay behind their ones, their lovers. Mental health symptoms, the same. The most of them, they had a traumatic life events. And when I say all this kind: forced to flee, bombing, life-threatening physical violence, etc., etc. However, only the 30% of these ones are going to be traumatized. Very important. So, sorry, there's people just saying that I have to leave. So sorry so much for that. Just only to finish that it's not us again. They did again assessment in 2015, and nowadays the situation are changing. So we have done 2 new reports. The situation is more or less the same, but the mental health are increasing. Why? Because they don't know what is going to happen. They feel the loss of control of their lives. So the mental health consultation has been increasing. It's much. There has been starting to be suicide attempts. There have been started to be conflict between them. It's quite severe now, the mental health situation there. So just finishing, I sorry so much. I will go for so sorry so much for that, but really it's yeah, it's bad day for me. So I will talk another day about vulnerable and not vulnerable, but just to finish, what we need. Consider alternative routes, consider alternative to the encampment system, not to put people in a place, but in small houses and so on. Find more programs, fund more programs to cover the needs of vulnerable people, provide effective access to healthcare, and not only in Greece, also in all the rest of countries, and develop and strengthen effective, safe, and legal channels to migration and adequate forms of international protection. So sorry so much for timing. So we have time for 5 minutes question.
There is usually a small delay between the video, between when we talk and what people can see. So maybe there will be questions coming in a while. In the meantime, I'm wondering if you could maybe share with us the slide and the information.
Yeah, I could not today, but I will do as soon as I settle
Yeah.
myself. Sorry so much.
So if
Yes,
you
sure.
just send it to Michael, maybe he can share it with us.
Sure.
So we don't have any questions so far, but I would like to ask you one question. If you could provide one, for example, a message or advice for medical students who would like to work or engage in work with refugees in the future, what would you say to them from the perspective of Doctors Without Borders and your perspective?
To prepare, for me, it's quite important, according to the things that I have seen, that many people went there with a very good will, but without preparation. So prepare as you were going to treat your grandmother. The things that you are going to see are more or less the same. You're going to see hypertension, you're going to see some traumas, you are going to see hypothermias, and so on. But don't go there as a doctor if you don't feel yourself prepared. That is one thing. And the other thing that I have also seen in a lot of volunteers is, please, when you come back, go to a psychologist, because it's not easy to deal with this frustration. For me, it has been one of the more hardest mission, and I have been in Ebola, I have been in malnutrition crisis, and a lot of places. And as is in our place, and if as we feel a kind of responsible for this, the feeling of frustration is bigger than in other places.
Yes, definitely, I agree. Thank you very much for the answer. So we do not have any questions so far.
I can ask another question if you still have some minutes, which is, do you have any advice for medical students right now as students, as for what they can do in this situation?
For sure. For me, my advice for everyone, medical student and non-medical, first, to keep informed very well about the reality. Don't allow yourself to read all these rumors as truth and so on. Read about in serious newspapers, in serious the Lancet, CDC, or whatever. Try to have an informed opinion, and after, when you are in face of a refugee migrant and so on, try without victimizing him, but trying to put yourself under his skin.
Thank you very much.
To you. There is also places, for example, as I tried to say, but it's true that as we didn't have so much time, I did not go deeply. But nowadays, the main problem that they are having is the integration. So if you can go not also as a medical student, but as citizens, them that there are people who feel and who share the challenge, the problems, and so on. It could be really, really, really important for them. Sorry. So if there is no more question, I promise you next time I will be more time, and we will have plenty of time for do that one or another slower, and with much time for questions. Sorry so much for this.
Thank you very much for being here, though.
Yes, a pleasure. My pleasure. Bye bye.
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 Goodbye.
So, to continue. Why is SCORP so interested in refugees? Well, I think it makes kind of sense because this is a group of people whose rights are often violated, as we just spoke about. And in addition, often they don't get the same state protection or protection from states because they tend to be maybe between states and no one really recognizes them as their responsibility. So from a human rights and peace point of view, it is, of course, an important topic for us to work with. But then I also thought it could be interesting to mention that when SCORP was first founded in the 1980s, the name of the Standing Committee was the Standing Committee on Refugees. So I think maybe it can also have like some historical connections that this is still one of our main topics. But back then, when we were founded, the focus of our work was much more on humanitarian action and like relief and raise awareness of the challenges that they face. But then eventually, as you know, we changed our name to Standing Committee on Human Rights and Peace, also because we figured that we need to tackle more of the root causes for displacement and to find sustainable solutions and not only work with the emergency and disaster response. And from a rights point of view, I think it was also very good what Julia mentioned, that quite often, even if people are given like the services that they need, there can be this mentality that they don't have the same right, but now we are such nice people, we're doing charity, and we will give people whatever they need and they should be grateful and so on, which is completely wrong from the rights-based approach. And I think it's also something to keep in mind that when we work with refugee rights or with any kind of human rights, these are rights, which means that every person has them and it doesn't matter how you behave or who you are or if you're happy or not and so on, and no one has to be grateful for being provided with their basic rights. Anyways, so what does SCORP do now? I would very much recommend you to have a look at the SCORP activity database. If you haven't seen it yet, you can find it in the Facebook group. It's a pinned post, or you can find it also on the email server. And if you cannot find it, you can send me an email to scorpd@ifmsa.org. I'm going to try to post it in the chat as well if it works. Let's see. Yeah, no. We're not allowed to send web addresses in the chat. It says, okay, maybe just I did. Anyways, so I would recommend you to have a look at it, and then you can choose in for area of activity, you can choose migrants. Yeah, I've already done that. Migrants, health and rights. And then you can see all the activities that have been collected by our regional assistants that are related to this topic. And then you can read more about each activity and maybe get some inspiration for things that you can also do in your country. You can get in touch with the people doing all these different activities. But in short, we work with a lot of different things, and it depends very much on the context and on the country what you can actually do. So, for example, one of the things that is done quite a lot is service provision. So, for example, hand out blankets or foods and clothes and so on. And this might not itself change society, but it definitely has an impact on the people that you're trying to help, of course. And then I also think it can be important in raising awareness, because like for us, for the students who go there and see all the problems and talk to the people, maybe we would then feel more motivated and more empowered to continue working in the future, and then we might have identified new areas of like problems and what we can work with. So that's something that is being done. And then, of course, we have a lot of capacity building events. We have workshops and talks and so on, both for medical students. So, for example, intercultural learning and so on, which could be useful in healthcare settings. But also we have capacity building kind of activities for affected groups. So maybe go to refugee camps to talk about like the healthcare system of this country, or to talk about sexual and reproductive health and rights and so on. That's also an area of work. And then we have some members working with fundraising, so maybe having bake sales and similar, and donating the money to an organization on the ground in another country, for example. We have quite a lot of awareness raising activities where we try to raise awareness of the general population as to what kind of challenges that refugees face, also work against the discrimination and the prejudice that exists, because I think there are a lot of like stereotypes and ideas of who and how a refugee is, and so on. And then advocacy is also something that I think we've tried to work more and more with, because somehow I also believe that this is the way you have to go in the end to actually change the society, to change policy and practice, and how authorities work, and for the change to be sustainable. But obviously this cannot maybe be done in all countries, because not all governments would listen to medical students, for example, but it has been done quite successfully in some countries, for example, increasing the access to healthcare and so on. But it's also a very, very long process. And this is also something we work on an international level. I mean, advocacy, which Michael will tell you much more about. But just to wrap it up, this is a very globally relevant topic, both because displaced people travel all over the world, but also because displacement does occur everywhere. And I know like what is in the news mainly now would be, for example, Syria. But then there are a lot of more countries, both in the Asia Pacific region, and in the African region, and in the Americas region, and also in Europe. Not the least, like in the news, there has been a lot about Ukraine, for example, lately. So it's definitely something that everyone can work with in one way or another. And I think that's all for me now. Of course, you are always welcome to write your questions to the right-hand side of the video. And Michael?
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica. So you already started with the advocacy and with shaping policies thing. So I'll tell you more about our work in an external field, external sphere. And to actually explain you what IFMSA does in the external level, I need to start with September 2016, last year. We go back to the New York and the New York Summit on Refugees and Migrants, when governments, for the first time when it comes to migration, and for second or third time when it comes to refugees, they came together, and governments formed the New York Declaration, which factually reformed the importance of global refugee regime for countries, and they adopted a set of commitments to enhance protection of refugees. And for our IFMSA actions for this year, this is the actual point where our engagement started. So to tell you more what IFMSA is right now doing. Well, in this New York Declaration, this document, there were two important international documents outlined, which are called Global Compacts. The first one is a Global Compact on migration, and the second one is a Global Compact on refugees. Medical students, why? Because so far, as Jessica told you at the beginning, we have the International Convention on Refugees from 1951 and the Additional Protocol from 1967, if I'm not mistaken. And this is the only base ground for now how refugees are internationally treated. But when it comes to countries and coordinated response, well, so far we don't have any international plan on how to actually tackle or how to actually manage people who are moving, people who are fleeing, both for migration, both for refugees. So that's why those compacts are so important for, I'll say, everyone, including refugees, including countries, including medical students and civil population. So that's why IFMSA is trying to somehow voice the opinion of medical students when it comes to health of refugees and health aspects of people on the move, the fleeing people. And that's what we are trying to do during this year and also for the next year, because this process of the creation of Global Compacts for Refugees is a 2 years process. And well, how can we or you get involved to this process? So maybe you remember that few days or weeks ago, IFMSA was attending the annual consultation of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees office. And I've sent you one very nice briefing from the International Council of Voluntary Agencies, ICVA. And this document was also shared in the SCORP Facebook group and through emails, and it contains very nice briefing on Global Compact for Refugees and other modalities which are connected with this Global Compact. IFMSA will try to be a member of consultations which will come right now for the Global Compact of Refugees, and we'll try to somehow, through design processes, to join this consultation process and to voice our opinion of medical students on the health of refugees. And well, that brings me to my second part, opinion of IFMSA on the health of refugees and migrants, asylum seekers. Let's talk about refugees right now. So we have our policy document. So in the IFMSA, represent the agreed stance of medical students on certain topic, and basically, thanks to the policy document, we are actually able to engage in international relations. We are able to say that medical students, 1.3 million medical students from 132 NMOs, state that we want governments or NGOs or medical students to do these certain steps to enhance the protection of refugees and, well, to fulfill their right to health. So that's why the policies are so important for us, and also for you members and active Scorpions in national member organizations. Because one thing is to have agreed stance on the international level. That's what IFMSA does. And then we need to implement that stance through our national organizations. So it basically means that also for you guys on the national and local level, it would be great to have a certain document, certain position on what you actually think 100 medical students from one university or thousands of medical students from the national member organization, and to join the IFMSA in our policy efforts. This is more complicated than it sounds, so I would be really happy if those who are interested to join us in our policy work, advocacy work. You can always write me an email at lrp@ifmsa.org, and we can try to think and try to design our advocacy strategy on how to reinforce our international activities, how to help you to work on the national level to protect refugees and to improve their access to healthcare. Also, when it comes to specific policies, for the March meeting 2016, we have created our policy document on asylum seekers and refugees health, which is available on our webpage. I guess I can send you the link to the chat in a few minutes when I'll stop the talk. And right now, connected to the topic which is really connected to refugees, but it's a topic of migration. We are developing our new policy document on migrants' health, which should be adopted, well, will be proposed for the adoption during August meeting 2017 in Tanzania. And of course, those issues are interconnected, migration and refugees. Level countries and stakeholders, they want to also maintain the distinction between refugees movements and migrants movements. So that's why, for example, we have two separate global compacts, but of course they are interconnected. So also, if you are interested to contribute to the shaping of our policy on migrants' health, feel free to do so. There was an email sent through Scorp server recently, and again, you can contact me. And the last thing I would like to talk about is actually connected to the projects and to activities of NMOs, as Jessica mentioned. We have our partners and or organizations with who we work together in our projects, advocacy efforts. And one of the most important organizations we work with is the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. And recently we've attended their annual consultation with NGOs. We had a very successful meeting with UNHCR, and I'm really happy and proud to announce to you that IFMSA has recently joined with Refugees Coalition of UNHCR. And this coalition is made of more than 100 civil society organizations, as for example, ICRC, Doctors Without Borders, or even private companies like Facebook and others, to show their stance and support for the refugees, their families, and integration to the society. So we just joined this coalition, and right now we are still discussing a way how to actually ensure that our activities of IFMSA members will be showcased or promoted through UNHCR channels. So it is so important for you to actually enroll your activities or register your activities either to relevant IFMSA program or through your regional assistants or Jessica to that database which Jessica showed you right now. Because for me as a person who represents the IFMSA on an external level, this is the most important thing. We need to know what we are doing internally, and we need to present it to our external partners. People are asking me like, IFMSA is really great organization, it seems really good from your website, and they actually ask me like, okay, so tell me, what do you do with refugees on the ground level? And then this is the point where we need your data, your work, your reports, and your summaries, because we want to also showcase your amazing work and try to also get some opportunities for you to improve your work, to get some sponsors, support, and etc., etc. So that's why it's really important. Well, right now, I think I would end my presentation here. In case you have any questions, you can write them into the chat, and you can also always contact me through Facebook or through email. Be happy to start to collaborate with so many new animals or new members on these external representation issues. Because as Jessica said, sometimes, of course, we work both in project management with like internal capacity building, but on the other hand, we need to also work in advocacy because in the end, laws, policies, and programs are those who truly shape the status of refugees. So without changes in political level and in policy level, we can't do much, and we also need to work in this field. So really happy to hear your questions, or more importantly, really happy to work with you in the future.
Thank you, Michael. I think we're leaving the floor for Yahya now.
So it's my turn now. So hi, my name is Yahya. I came from Syria, Damascus. I studied medicine in Damascus University for 2 years. And I left Syria in 2015. So I would like to share some of my experiences as a refugee and the lessons that I learned from these experiences. So I guess before 2011, when the word Syria would be mentioned, no one would think about victims, destruction, or refugees. But nowadays, unfortunately, these three words are always attached with the name of Syria. As you know, we have now 6 million internally displaced people in Syria, and about 5 million living in neighboring countries and beyond. So I had personally to be displaced 4 times inside Damascus, seeking for safety before I had to leave the country. I couldn't go to my university many times because of danger on the road, and and I had once an experience with a sniper. It was too dangerous, and I think I would like to briefly share this experience with you, to show how it's easy to take life in this world in comparison with saving one. So my experience with this sniper after I was displaced from my home, I was living in my grandfather's house, and there was a sniper at the end of the street, the main street. So the time was about 6 p.m. and I had to go to my cousin's home. So I walked through the main street, and there was this sniper at the end of the street, and I think he was like waiting for me to go closer to him. But when I took this subway, I heard this shot, and when I looked back, I think the shot or the bullet went into the wall, and I could see the smoke from this shot. So I think I ran away and got to my cousin's home like very fast, and I had this I was lucky to live another day to share this story. So I think that as I said, it's really easy in this world to take life or I'm sorry. So it's really easy to take life in this world in comparison with saving one. As you know, when as the armed war in Syria began, many people started to thinking which side should we take. For me, as a medical student, of course, I couldn't even think about the carrying a weapon or something, because my duty in the future will be, of course, to help people and rescue them, whatever their belonging is. So the idea of carrying a weapon and fighting another people, it was absolutely unacceptable. because medical students should, as I believe, should always have the faith that the, a human soul has the ultimate value in this world, and a human soul is also the most precious thing that God ever made and created. And so that's my belief, my faith, and of course what every medical student should always believe. Um, so I'm sorry. Can you hear me? So, um, as my experience as a refugee, so it was in 2015, in month August. I left Syria, heading to first to Lebanon. We had to wait about 6 hours on the Lebanese borders. Something. Yeah. So first we had to Lebanon. We had to wait about 6 hours at the Lebanese borders before we could get the permission to go into the Lebanon land. Um, then we took a ship to Turkey, and as you know, from Turkey to Greece, we had to deal with smugglers and gangs. They were like criminals, real criminals, and to get to this Greek island. So we had to deal with smugglers, and we had to pay like too much money for them to get into this small boat with no safety at all in this sea. Um, like in order to get to the island. And of course, these smugglers, they didn't have any respect to a human being. They were dealing with us like we are just bags of or something, or like numbers, or just like money. So they didn't treat us like a human being. And we were lucky that our boat didn't sink in the sea, and we could make it to the island. So the island was called Lesbos. I think that Julia was talking about the island Lesbos. Yeah. So we could make it to the Lesbos, and we met there very kind people, Greek people, and they provide us with water, food, and everything. We stayed there in the island for about 2 days before we took a big ship to Athens, I guess. And from Athens, we had to go through Macedonia, Serbia, and then Hungary. And of course, Hungary was closing the borders. They were building like a big wall, and we could make it. We had also to deal with a smuggler there in Hungary, and he could help us going through Hungary. So, and after we go through Hungary, I think that was the time when Germany sent some trains to Hungary, and to help people to get to Germany or to Austria. So we could go through in this on these trains to Germany, and I think that was the last step of our journey here. So I wanted to say that like this experience as a refugee, it's not a journey for us, like because like so many people lost their families, they lost their monies on the road. Some of them would sink into the sea for about 8 or 10 hours with no helping in the midnight or something. So it was not a journey for them. We had to do it because we had we have seen much worse things in Syria, and this was our last chance to have a better life, to go to Europe or anyone, any. I'm sorry. So to get to Europe or anywhere else. So I also wanted to say. So I've learned from this experience that at the same time when there is like these smugglers and these criminals on the road, there were also kind people who were standing for hours on the road waiting for refugees to help them, to provide them with food and water. So it's always like this. I think there will always be good and bad in this world, and anyone has the free choice to choose between good or bad, to be a criminal or a savior. Um, so I think I live now in Germany. As you know, like the system for asylum seeker here in Germany is the same, and I think it's not good at all for students or something, because like an asylum seeker could be a student and could be an older person, could be a worker or something. So and the system works for all the same. So like for me as a student, I had to wait about 8 months before I got um, my agreement as a refugee here. And in these 8 months, I could, for example, learn the language faster. I could do anything. I could provide anything. But I had to wait for about 8 months before I got my agreement and my residency here in Germany. So I think that was the only bad thing about the system here in Germany. So I think it should be different with the cases. For example, when the asylum seeker is a student, then he should go to a language school first, and he can maybe go to a work in this waiting time, and not only doing not doing anything and just staying at home. So yeah, I've learned now the German language. That's why my English now is not so good. I mixed some German words with English. Um, and I'm preparing now. I'm preparing now myself to go to university. I'm applying now for many university to continue my studying as a medical student here, and I think I have a big chance to go in 2 months to a university here in Germany. So I think that was my speaking, my experiences, and thank you all for listening. So going back to you, Jessica.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Um,
Dankeschön. Bitteschön.
yeah, so as you can all see in the chat, Michael also wrote that if you have any questions or comments, please write them. And because we're essentially done with the content, so now it's more like if you have anything to ask, we're more than happy to answer it. And in the meantime, I will just keep on talking. This is the last step of our World Refugee Day campaign, essentially on an international level. So I want to recap a little bit about what we've done. You can still find all the information on the website, which you can find at www.ifmsa.org/WRD 2017. And what we've done, as you might have seen, which I hope that you have seen, is that we've had a social media campaign, we've published infographics, we've had the profile picture and the cover picture. We have shared a video with contribution from the members, from you, with interviews with people who have been displaced, where they have told us about their experiences. We have this story game where you get to go through a couple of scenarios as a displaced person and make decisions regarding what you want to do in this situation. And what more have we done? I don't even remember. We have the World Refugee Day manual, of course. And in the manual, you can also find more ideas for activities that you can do in your NMO and so on. And I think that's generally it. We've tried to highlight different aspects of the topic, both when it comes to more sustainable solutions and like urgent action. We've tried to incorporate more voices from the affected populations themselves, so that it's not always like SCORP says that refugees need this or that, but also to like have this connection to reality and so on. And I hope that you have found it useful, and maybe that you have started some new activities during this period of time. It seems like we haven't gotten any questions. Does any of the speakers or Jose have any questions for anyone else? Anything you would like for us to discuss?
I would like to maybe share one comment if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we spoke, we know that the whole situation with refugees and their integration and basically lives in the countries after arrival, and also like during the period of transit, it's really difficult. But one aspect which I mentioned, the access to education for refugees when they come to the countries of well, definitive accommodation. It's also a really huge issue, and in the IFMSA, we wanted to start to work on it in cooperation with Standing Committee on Medical Education, because as Yaya mentioned, there are so many refugee students who come to the countries and they have problems, sometimes problems to continue with their studies in these countries. So if you have any friends from Standing Committee on Medical Education, comedians, you can try to talk to them and maybe try to develop something at the national level, to try to talk with universities or to try to talk with your governments to actually try to provide university spots or scholarships or any possibilities. How can these young medical students or generally young people access their education there? Because they already studied in their countries, but due to war violence and persecution or any other reasons, they were not able to continue and they had to come to their countries. So this is just one of the ideas, how to maybe start to work on the national level. And if you will start, or if you have any success stories, really don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll try to help you and showcase and promote and support.
Yep. I also want to mention that we have worked on the campaign, or on a parallel campaign, with the European National Officers on Human Rights and Peace, and you will find the outcomes eventually. We will share it with you. If there are no questions, I think that is essentially it. Thank you very much for watching, and we will share with you the relevant information that we have presented through an email. And I hope that we will get in touch in the future, and that you will continue working on this topic. Any last words from the other speakers?
Yeah, I would like to thank everyone who was involved in this campaign on the national, international level, also the small working group who worked tirelessly on preparing everything, and also the people who joined, speakers who joined this webinar, um, who delivered really nice speeches, and we got to get an overview of what is happening right now and how is the situation in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose, for hosting us. All right. Bye, everyone. I will see you another time.
Goodbye. Take care. Have a nice rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Bye.